Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Zevachim Daf Ayin Ches. We begin at the Mishnah on Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, 4 lines towards the bottom of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Dam shenis'ar b'mayim. Up until now we spoke about animal parts or animals themselves, karbanos that got mixed up. Now we shift to dam, the blood of the karban. Now typically, throughout the Torah, when we have a mix of ingredients, you have something which was forbidden, fell into a pot of permissible food, the formula is shishin, right? Batal b'shishin. It's about a 60th, right? So if it's less than a 60th, null and void, which is about 1.6% of the total mix. Because below that threshold, that minute amount has deemed to have lost its unique flavor within the general mix. It lost its uniqueness. It lost its individuality. It's no longer discernible in terms of the general flavor of this mix, of this food. So there, it follows the shear of shishin. However, here we speak about non-food items, where it has no relation to flavor. It's about the question of whether it's called blood or not. Blood that got mixed into water. Is this blood or not blood? How do we determine that? So the Mishnah will tell us. Here, the determining factor is appearance. What does it look like? Color. If it retained its color, it retained its status. If it lost its color, it lost its status, and now becomes nullified in the greater mix. Says the Mishnah, Dar, blood of a korban, which is red, of course, shenis'ar b'mayim, got mixed into water. What happens to this mix? Can we still process it as a korban? Can it still be applied to the mizbeach? Well, it depends how much water there is in this mix. Was it enough to dull the color of the blood? Then it's a puzzle for zrika. Im yesh bo maris dam, if it still has that reddish color to it, it still looks like blood, kosher. Then it's kosher for hakrava on the mizbeach. But otherwise, if it lost its red coloring, it no longer looks like blood. Although it may be, tinged, but it's no longer blood looking, then it cannot be used for a korban. This Arabiya. Next case, let's say the red blood get mixed into red wine. Wine is typically red, right? Altera yayin ki is adam. Okay, so it's red and red. But it's in red wine, not red blood. Shall we say, well, it's still red, so it's still din blood? Oh no. We have to treat it as though it got mixed into water and judge accordingly. If this amount of blood and this amount of water would still retain its color, fine, otherwise it's batal. Okay, exactly so says the Mishnah. If the red blood gets mixed into red wine, we can't just say, well, it's still red, it's okay. No, Ryan, we view, we visualize, we imagine. We treat the red wine as though it would be water and judge accordingly. Likewise, if the dam of the korban was nis'ar b'dam behema, into other blood of another behema, which is not a korban, not suitable for akrava, or b'dam hachaya. Likewise, we treat it as though it got mixed into water and judge accordingly. Roin oisai kiluhu mayim. Rabbi Daimer, no, there's never a concern if in fact it's blood into blood. Why? Rabbi Daimer in dam mevatel dam. Since they're both blood, irrespective of how much he got mixed into, even if it's a drop of kosher blood into a ton of ordinary, mundane blood, which is not kosher for zrika, it doesn't matter. Since they're both of the same type, there's no opposition, there's no confrontation, there's no fight between the two, which allows the droplet of kosher blood to retain its status, retain its identity. and it's still kosher for zrika. Concludes the Mishnah. Nisara b'dam psulim. This is a totally new case. Let's say a bit of, or a lot of kosher blood of a kosher carbon gets mixed into blood of deficient carbonates that were puzzle. Rashi explains, even if it's just a small amount of that problematic material. You shafech lama, spill the whole mix into the drain, which was an amma wide, running through the Azara. And the Gemara explains there's a concern, there's a gzeira, because the unlearned person might deduce and say, look, well, you see, you can actually process the dam of a puzzle. He won't realize, because that little bit is null and void. I'll say, well, you see, even the blood of a non-kosher, of a deficient, disqualified carbon can be used for zrika. Likewise, dam ha-tamtzis. If the proper blood of the carbon, the dam ha-nefesh, typically we discussed this in the past, that you have to use dam ha-nefesh for zrika. The blood which expresses the life force of the animal, as opposed to dam ha-tamtzis, just the remnants in the animal, that can't be used for zrika. So let's say lots of kosher blood gets mixed into a little bit of dam ha-tamtzis. Likewise, it can cause confusion and misunderstanding. People might conclude that you can actually use dam ha-tamtzis of a carbon for zrika. Therefore, the whole mix is meant to be poured away, shafech lam. Rav Lezer Machshir, he says in this case it's okay. Why? We will see in the Gemara. Now, as Rashi explains, in these two cases, the issue is not min ha-Torah, because the majority, the roiv, is kosher blood. But midrabanan, we're concerned it might lead to misunderstanding, to erroneous conclusions, and you have to hold back. And therefore, the Kohen failed to seek advice and seek instruction. V'nasan, he actually applied this mix on the mizbeach kosher. The carbon is okay, because ultimately, min ha-Torah, it's okay. So in the beginning, we spoke about dam of carbon getting mixed into water. If it retained its redness, it retains its status. What get mixed into what? The kosher into the blood into the water, or the water into the blood? Which way did it go? You should know, loishanu, it's only true. This halacha, that if it retains color, it retains status, is only going to work ela shenaflu mayim l'toich dam. If it followed this sequence, water into the blood, so it sort of trickled into the blood, and then stopped, and then upon evaluation we see it's still red, so it's okay, because the water now is bottled to the blood. But if it should happen in the reverse, aval nafal dam l'toich mayim, suppose the blood trickled into the water, so although ultimately, in terms of the final mix, the final product, it's still deemed red, it doesn't matter. That blood, as it was trickling in, drop by drop, becomes nullified. Because at that point it lost its color. So even though by the time it was finished trickling in, it sort of resuscitated itself, it regained its color. Too late. Because in the interim, while these droplets of blood were falling in, their color was not discernible anymore. So at that point it becomes nidche, it becomes rejected, permanently disqualified from further use. Aval nafal dam teich rishin bottle. Every drop that comes in one at a time is bottle. Amra papa. That's only with respect to carbon materials. Rashi explains the idea of dichoy, of rejection, is only bedavar kedusha in terms of holy items and carbon materials. Once it's out, it's out. But when it comes to mitzvah materials, for instance, regarding kisui hadam, so we know that if we shechta a chaya or a bird, the blood is meant to be covered with soil, with earth. Suppose the same thing would happen. The blood gets mixed into water, and the halach would be the same idea as our Mishnah, that if it's still red enough, you can still fulfill the mitzvah of kisui hadam. Says Rav Papa, in this type of circumstance, even if it was blood trickling into water, in which case, in the interim, it lost its color. But since enough blood ultimately falls in to regain its redness, you can now use it for kisui hadam. We don't say, well, if it was, disabled in the interim, it becomes permanently disabled. That's only by carbon It's a matter of kedusha. The kedusha becomes, deactivated. It's gone. By mitzvah, as long as it's suitable now, we don't care what happened in the interim. Amar Papa l'inyan kisui, regarding kisui adam ein again, this stipulation wouldn't apply. Why? Levish ein dichoy. The concept of rejection does not apply by mitzvahs. Amar Rish Lakish. That comes an interesting case. Hapigel v'hanoiser v'hatamei. So you have a piece of pigel, piece of a basar of a carbon, which is pigel, which is forbidden for consumption, of course. A person eats that, he gets malchus. You have a piece of leftover meat, noisar. V'hatamei, a piece of carbon which became tummy. Now at this point, in the Gemara, this stage, we're assuming that there were different types here. For instance, the pigel was a piece of meat, a kazayis of meat. The noiser was leftover mincha material, flour, dough from a mincha, different types of materials. Okay? So he picks out two of these items, an olive worth, a kazayis of the pigel meat, a kazayis of the noiser meat, shebalul on zebazeh, and then he starts eating and chews it up together. Va'achlan, he mixed them up and eats them. Pater. So you would think, okay, he had a kazayis of this, a kazayis of that, he should get double malchus. Guess what? He's pater. What do you mean? He walks away full. He had two kazayisim of Israel. No, he's pater. Why? Because of bittul. Since there was an exact amount of each, a kazayis of this and a kazayis of that, when it gets mixed in, when he's chewing them together, let's visualize what happens. Particle by particle. A little bit of the flour, a little teeny particle, inevitably is going to get mushed in and embedded between two pieces of, two fibers of meat. For example, right? And this happens all along throughout the process. Some of this gets mixed in that, some of this, right? It goes both ways. There's an exchange of materials between the meat and the dough. So now let's just again visualize this drop of dough, which is now enmeshed, embedded in that little piece of meat that's surrounding it, becomes batal, becomes nullified. Batal b'rayif, right? So there's more meat than dough in that little corner. That little dough is now batal on the meat. So ultimately, you've diminished the kazayas of dough. You started with an exact kazayas. You're missing a drop which became nullified, absorbed within the meat. That's being eaten at the same time. You no longer have a kazayas of the dough. Or vice versa. It can go the other way, right? The meat can become batal on the dough. So throughout this exchange back and forth, there's going to be bittul taking place. Right? So let's say the dough getting batal in the meat. So now the meat became enlarged. You have more than a kazayas there. But the dough became, shrunk. And vice versa. And you'll never know. It's virtually impossible to determine, to even speculate that it's exactly 50-50. And each one retains its kazayas. Right? It's virtually impossible to say that. We have to assume that in fact, one is up and one is down. One of these two items got sort of enlarged slightly, and the other one got diminished slightly. And we don't know which one's what. We'll never know. So even though he was warned ahead of time, don't do this, the halacha is, you have to warn a person in a very specific fashion. And here there was an element of uncertainty in terms of which one is going to be the Isser. So he's completely pater. Completely pater. He walks away full, he's pater. He has no malchus. And he explains, it's impossible to say that one did not override and overwhelm the other material to the point that he nullified at least a couple of particles of the other material, which now shrunk below the kazayas threshold, and therefore he's not liable for it. Says the Gemara, we can actually conclude three halachas from this statement of Rish Lakish. Shema min atlas, three halachas. Shema min, we can learn from here, isurin mvatan zeh. Don't think, Rashi says, don't think if it's just Isser falling into heter, that becomes batal. Even Isser within Isser. If you go with nicer, because there are two different types of Isserim, two different entities. If there's a crossover, if there's an absorption, if there's a bittul, they're mevatel each other. Number two, let's realize that the different types of materials impart flavor into each other. So sure, that little bit of dough which was embedded in that meat had a distinct flavor, different than the meat. So it's still discernible within the meat. So you would think that's called tam ki'ika, when a flavor is discernible. We treat it like the actual item is still here. By the way, that's the foundation, that's the basis for the halacha of bittul b'shishim, right? Less than a 60th nullifies the distinctness of its flavor, but more than that, there's 2-3% of a mix. So the meat is felt within the milk, or the milk within the meat, even though it's negligible, but the flavor is what determines presence. Likewise over here, the flavor of the dough is still felt within the meat. Why is it bottled? No. Ushmaminot noisein tam beroiv. When a minority imparts flavor, transfers flavor to the majority element, which sort of lends us to feel its presence. Lav d'oraisa. That concept is not minat-torah. It's only midrabanan, but minat-torah. As long as it's 49% is a miut, even though he has lots of flavor to offer, it's batal. Likewise, in our case, where it's an issue of giving him malchus, you can't give him malchus, because that miut was batal in the roiv, despite the fact that his flavor is still present. And thirdly, ushmamina hasra asafik, lo yishma asra, as we explained, even though he was warned ahead of time, there's an element of uncertainty to the asra, because we could not really determine which one of these two items retained its proper volume, and which one lost his volume to his friend. Hasra asafik. It doesn't constitute a warning. I will not activate the malchus process. Mosav Rabba says, Rabbi, I have a kasha on this. Halacha of Rish Lakish. Are you telling me that flavor is not reckoned with min ha-Torah? As long as there's majority against, we don't reckon with your flavor presence? Mosav Rabba, asach iso min achitin min ha'oros. Halacha is that only a dough comprised of flour from the 5 primary grains, wheat, barley, spelt, etc., is subject to the halachas of challah separation. And likewise, only that type of material can be used for matzah. Now let's say you have a mix, some wheat flour with some rice flour, and lots of rice flour. Is there a chi of challah? Can you use it for matzah? Well, depends. If you can still feel that wheat flavor in there. Clearly, even when there's bittul b'roiv, even when he's just a minority of the general mix, flavor gives him presence, right? So the Mishnah says, "Im yesh ba tam dagan." If you can still feel the dagan flavor, the wheat flavor, chayevas b'chala. We treat it like a wheat product, and there's chiyuv of challah. V'avgav ba'oros, even though the greater portion here is rice. It's irrelevant because flavor is what carries a day. Well, midrabanan says the more, this is only midrabanan. Yochi, if it's only midrabanan, let's move on to the next part of the halacha, where it says that you can actually use it for matzah, which is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Adam yotzebo yidichvaso Pesach. Rashi explains that again for matzah you can only use chameshes haminim. Pasuk says le'seichel olav chametz, shivas yamim teichel olav matzah. It's only something which is bodei chimutz, which comes to proper, leavening and rising, can be used for matzah. Matzah is sort of the flip side of chametz, right? So something which can turn into chametz, which is only chameshes minei, can be used for matzah, as opposed to rice products, which doesn't really ferment properly. Ein boin l'dei chimutz el dei sirachin, sort of sours or whatever. It doesn't really go through a proper fermentation process. Okay, so that's the raya that we're speaking about. Adinda iraisa. So clearly, tam ki ikar min ha-Torah. How can Rish Lakish say, if one eats this meat dough mix, he's pater? because inevitably there's some bittul b'roiv. Who cares about bittul b'roiv? Roiv. It's not enough to be mevatel if there's a tam present. Says the Gemara, you're right. We're not speaking about different types. If there were different types, if the pigel was meat and the noiser was dough, right? This is a korban and this is mincha. There's no question that he would be chayiv because the flavor is still present. El min b'sheni min, if there's two different minim here, two different types, but time is certainly the determining factor is flavor. You're right. Min b'mina beruba. However, Shlakish was speaking about two pieces of meat, one pigel, one noiser. Min b'mina, the same type. In this case, what activates the bittul process? Roiv, beruba. 51% versus 49%. That explains Rish Lakish exempting this fellow from malchus, because inevitably there's some meat from the pigel which got him better than the nicer meat. 51-49, that little bit becomes batal. So now the pigel meat, for instance, now shrunk to less than a kazayas, or vice versa. Okay, so again, Rish Lakish tells us a great chiddush. One consumed the kazayas of two different yisurim, an exact kazayas of each. Since you chewed it together, mix it together, inevitably there's going to be some exchange of material, some crossover, some bittul taking place. And since it's impossible to determine which one of which increased ultimately and which one diminished from its kazayis, you're going to be butter from malchus on both. Ask the Gemara a question. I mean, we're coming down very easy now on this fellow. On the one hand, we say that if it's min b'she'ein minai, if the mix entails two different types of materials, 51-49 doesn't really help us. We need less than a 60th, which, as we said, is 1.6%, way less than 49%. But if it's min b'minai, they're both the same type of isser, 49% is enough to make him batal. That's very easy. Finish shy. Why do we do that? Why don't we apply the same, at least when it comes to two isurim, or as we're going to see when it comes to, blood into water, into blood, all these types of mixes, carbon materials, and the question of things becoming tummy or tahar. Why don't we come down a little bit more strict on it and say, look, even though they look like the same thing, but 49% is not going to be batal. Let's apply the same or similar formula that we apply to two different types. Let's apply a similar concept to the same type and hold back the bittul. Unless the item is just a really small amount. How can we allow 49% to be batal? Let's treat min b'minoi just like min b'sheina minoi, just like if it was a different type. Why would you say that? This none. Look at our Mishnah. Dam got mixed into wine, red wine. Although, in a way, you can say they're the same in terms of appearance. Min b'minoi, they're both red. So you think, as long as it's 49%, it's batal? No. What does the Mishnah say? We view the wine as though it's water. And then, we have to evaluate whether this amount of blood and this amount of water would still retain its color. And it's not batal. Only if it wouldn't retain its color, if it would lose its color, then it's batal. So apparently we don't come down with bittul so quickly. We don't apply bittul just like that. This not this arabiyain, red wine, red blood got mixed into red wine. Roi noise kilu mayim. We view the red wine as though it's water. My love, let's assume the Mishnah means roi noise layain kilu mayim. We imagine the red wine to be just translucent clear water. And we don't allow bittul just to happen like that, unless there's so much there that the blood would have lost its color. Right? So again, we don't just say, well, they're both red. Roiv is going to be mevatel. As long as it's 49% or less, it's batel. We don't say that. We need way more to mevatel this blood. Mepharshim, goes into a whole long discussion. Why the Gemara would, why would we have such a question? I mean, we know that typically Isser and Heter is batel b'roiv. Rachi rabim lahatas, we follow the majority. So he takes great pains to explain why the Gemara, poses this question, specifically in our sugya. He comes up with different reasons. He says, we're speaking about Rish Lakish, about Isser v'Isser. Isser v'Isser is much harder to be mevatel than Isser and Heter. Perhaps because each one is distinct and separate and has its own, Isurim. Likewise, when it comes to carbon materials, which are not easily batel. Likewise, when it comes to questions of things which are tameh, right? So all these, should be more difficult to be mevatel. We shouldn't just, easily apply a simple formula of roiv and say as long as you're 49% or less, you're batel. You need more than that. You need another element. You need more reason to actually activate bittul in this case, as we find in the Mishnah. So here it's actually pretty interesting because it's really two different types. It's blood and wine. It's just that in terms of appearance, they look the same. So here there's actually another reason to understand why the bittul should be more difficult to achieve, because really they're different things. And when they're different, 49% is not enough, right? Okay, in any case, we see that it's not enough to have majority. Says the Malay, no, that's not what the Mishnah meant. The Roy Noisel Adam Kilhumayim. Mishnah meant just the opposite, that blood into wine is batel b'roiv. We view the blood as though it's water, worthless water. It's batel, it can't be used for carbon. If that would be the true meaning of the Mishnah, why would the Mishnah say we have to imagine it as though it's water? Just state clearly that it's batel. Very simple. Batel my Mishnah would just say it's batel. Apparently that's not what the Mishnah has in mind. It's the opposite. It's not batel, because we don't just say, okay, red and red, batel. Batel b'roiv. No. We imagine the red wine as though it's water, and then you need way more than 51% to nullify the color of this blood. V'aytan, you have another brisa where we see likewise. Rabbi Daimer, Roi Noise Kilu Yain Adam. This actually is a brisa coming up in a minute. We will see exactly what the context is. But in any case, Rabbi says there as well, you have two items of similar appearance. Don't say it's min b'minai, it's batel b'roiv. No. We imagine, we treat it as though it's red wine. Imdiha mar isai, if there's enough water there to dull that red color, then kasha, we treat it like water, and it has tefillah in the mikveh. We'll see in a minute. From lav, otherwise possible. So clearly, we imagine things, we visualize. We don't just simply say, well, you're the same type, the same color, batel b'roiv. You need way more to make bittul than just 51%. So why in the case of Rish Lakish, in the case of the two Yisurim, we say 49% is enough to be batel? You're right, Tanoi, it's actually a machlekes Tanoi. Whether or not, when it comes to items of min b'minai, is 49% enough for bittul? The Sani, you have a brisa, the leaf, you have a bucket, which happens to be tamei, which needs to be immersed in a mikveh. Problem is, it's filled with liquid. Sheish boi layayin lavan, it has white wine, which is similar in appearance to the water surrounding mikveh water, in which he's going to be immersed, or milk, which is likewise considered similar color to the water around it. And he immersed this bucket in the mikveh. And he left the wine or the milk inside. So now, as long as enough mikveh water poured into this bucket and displaced 51% of that milk or white wine, as long as you have majority content of this in this bucket containing mikveh water, right? So the rest is just batal b'roiv. So now we treat the bucket as though it's full, completely full with mikvah water, and now the bucket is considered to have been fully immersed in the mikvah, and it's tahor. Right. So according to Tanakama, since the water surrounding mikvah water and the light-colored liquid within the bucket are of similar appearance, they're considered min b'mina, because when it comes to mikvah halachas, it's about appearance. It's got to look like water, right? So with respect to determining types, they're both the same type because they both have the same appearance, light-colored. So min b'mina is batal b'roiv. Rabbi Doimer, no, not so quick. Not so quick. After all, there are two different types of materials. And it's a matter of, making tahara. We don't just allow 49% to be batal. Rabbi Doimer, roin oisai, kiluhu yain adon. Even though the bucket content is white, is light colored, no. In our minds, we imagine it to be red colored, red wine. And the only way for that to become nullified is if there's enough mikvah water spilled in, poured into this bucket, to nullify the reddish color of that wine. Im dia marisa kosh, if the color had dulled and lightened, and it's okay. Otherwise it's possible. Okay, so here we have two shitas regarding min b'minai. Tanakama says batal b'roiv, even with respect to mikvah and tumah and tahara. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. And that would also be in line with our Mishnah, that it's blood and water. We don't just, blood and red wine. We don't just say min b'mina is batal b'roiv. We imagine the wine to be water, and it's more difficult to make bittul on that blood. Whereas Rish Lakish, who says min b'mina is always batal b'roiv, he's going like the Tanakama, the first shita of this brisa here, with the bucket, where he says, 49% is enough for bittul. Viramini, here comes a kasha with Rabbi Yehuda himself, who he just told me is most strict when it comes to this type of bittul. He says, Ryan, we imagine, we visualize. Viramini, here comes a kasha from a brisa where it seems that Rabbi Yehuda himself allows Roy to be mevatel min b'minai. Lishum ali rukin. Again, a bucket filled with saliva material, which is thick and creates that barrier between the surrounding mikvah water. Vidbili, and he immersed this bucket in the mikvah. It's worthless. Kidloi taval, it's as though it never immersed because the mikvah water doesn't really have access to the interior of the bucket. Meraglaim, if it's filled with personal wastewater, that in a way is considered like a variation of water. Right now, we view it kilu ein maim as though it's plain water. As long as there's some connection between the mikvah water and the content of a kli, it's okay. It becomes one, continuous entity. Moleme chatas. Suppose the bucket is filled with paraduma water, which Rashi says is very special, it's very prominent, and it's kadosh, and actually it's tameh, not meant to touch paraduma water needlessly. So now, if it's in the bucket, and you immerse the bucket in the mikvah, so content of the bucket is water. The surrounding mikvah water is water. Here's a classic min b'minai. How do you make a connection? You need a majority, no more than a majority. As long as the bucket fills mostly with mikvah water, 51% mikvah water versus 49 mechatas, it's batal. Min b'minai is batal b'roiv. Now, man shamas le'di islay roin. Now, let's realize this brisa has no name attached to it. Let's try to determine who authored this brisa. So let's take a closer look at the wording of the brisa. By the Meraglaim, it says Roy Noisei. Roy Noisei is a term coined by Rabbi Yehuda in the previous discussion. Right? Roy Noisei, right? So it's wine. Let's assume he's the one speaking here as well. Man shamas le'dis le'roin. Who's the one that subscribes to this coined term called Roy? Rabbi Yehuda. Uktanya, still the brisa in the last case says, when it's water and water, min b'minai, we don't say, well, you're different entities, you're different types. You need more than 51%. 51 is enough. It's a good question. The answer is, depends who he's quoting. Rabbi Yehuda's personal opinion is, min b'min is batal b'roiv. So water and water, red blood and red wine, there's similarity. Min b'min is batal b'roiv. When he stated earlier that it doesn't go so easy as batal b'roiv, Hada Rabbi, that was his Rebbe speaking. He was quoting his Rebbe. Rashi explains. Let's first see just the next few lines in the Gemara. Who is the Rebbe? That's Rabbi Gamliel. The son of Rabbi Yehuda Mishum, he quotes Rabbi Gamliel, his Rebbe. Ein dam mevatel dam. Suppose we have two items which are really the same items. Blood and blood. Proper blood with deficient blood. Ein dam mevatel dam, like we have in our Mishnah, right? Two bloods, blood of carbon with the blood of the Yechulin. Doesn't matter. Percentages, proportions are irrelevant. The Ran, by the way, Mesech Nedarim explains, because bittul will only occur when we have confrontation between two opposing entities. Basar and chalav, right? Dam and water. But when they're both of the same ilk, same type of material, there's no opposition. There's no cancellation. There's no nullification at all. Ein dam mevatel dam. Another two examples, ein roik mevatel roik. You have saliva that was just tamei from a zav, mixed in with other proper saliva. There's no bittul. Vein meraglayim mevatel meraglayim. Likewise, when it comes to meraglayim, there's no bittul because they're the same type of item. Explains Rashi. So just like Rabbi Gamliel holds, blood doesn't nullify blood. Min b'mini is not batal. Likewise, in our cases. So, for instance, you have a bucket with white wine immersed in mikvah water. So technically there are different types of materials. This is wine, this is water. But in terms of the visuals, the appearance, which is really what determines when it comes to immersion in a mikvah and connecting to the mikvah, they're both white. There's an element of likeness, of similarity. Rabbi Gamliel is machmer on that too. Not only when they're really the same thing is there no bittul, even when they're similar in terms of appearance, which is the, focus factor here, right? That's the primary criterion that we're dealing with. Since there's an element of similarity, you don't just say batal b'roiv, right? Because there's diminished opposition. There's less confrontation because there's an element of similarity. The only way to make bittul is to treat it as though they're different elements and apply that formula. For instance, white wine, within the mikvah water, we treat it like red wine. And the only way you can have bittul is if there's enough water there mixed into this bucket that would theoretically nullify red wine. Then you have bittul. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's Rebbe. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda himself holds, just like min b'minoi, blood and blood is batal, because we don't look at the physical properties, we look at the halachic status of these items. This is kosher, this is pasul. They're viewed like two separate opposing entities, and there's bittul. Likewise, when it comes to those items, mikvah water with the meichatos, min is batal b'roiv. Says the more Rava Omar. Let's just backtrack a second. We had a kasha, a seeming contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda himself, right? Initially, Rabbi Yehuda told us, royin, right? We're more strict. We don't just view these similar items as min b'minoi and be batal b'roiv. Versus when it comes to the case of the bucket filled with the chatas water, the paraduma water, we say 49% is enough for bittul. Why? Says the Gemara, Rava Amar. Really, Rabbi Yehuda holds like his Rebbe that we're more strict when it comes to bittul. So why by the paraduma water is a batal b'roiv? It's an exceptional case, he says. Rava Amar betlisha toichet tor v'gabi tamei askina. We're speaking about a unique case where the dli, the bucket that we're speaking of, that requires tevila, wasn't really fully tummy. Toichet tor, the interior was really tar. V'gabi tamei askina, only the back was tummy. How's that possible? It actually says certain type of tumas have that effect. A tumah which is only midrabanan, tumas mashkin, we touch liquid which is tummy which is only midrabanan. It's only mitami the back, right? The area which it touched. So technically, only the back needs to be immersed in a mikvah, not the interior. The medina sagilu b'koldu, truthfully, only a drop entry would be enough, meaning the back has to immerse, and only a drop over the lip so that the lip is covered as well. So this way you get the whole back. V'rabbanon hu degazru. But the Chacham were concerned that since this bucket is filled with precious water, paraduma water, right? This fellow might actually stop the water a bit too early, lest it get mixed into the paraduma water, make it puzzle, right? Because it's meant to be fresh spring water. If it's mixed in with mikvah water, it becomes puzzle. So you might stop a bit too early and not allow the mikvah water to go over that lip, for concern that it might trickle in. Oh, is a concern about that. And therefore we require him actually to fill the interior as well, to ensure that he does a proper job. He might be concerned about the water. Because of his concern. It's a gersa of lematfale, right? Teufel, right? He's going to be concerned about the water entering and mixing with the chatas water, and therefore he'll hold back. He'll hesitate to properly be teufel the bucket, and allow the water to reach over the top, lip. And therefore they require him to fill it up with water to make sure you do a good job. So once he gets to the point of 51%, so most of this kli is now filled with water, we know he did a good job. You're not going to go more than that. So yeah, if the issue would be that you have to actually immerse the full interior, since the interior is full of chatas water, 51% wouldn't be enough, because there's no bitul b'roiv, and even in this case when it's min b'minay, because we're strict when it comes to these things, we require more than 51%, as we explained. But here, it wasn't really needed to begin with. It was only a concern, a gzera, to make sure he does a good job and gets the lip covered. Once he gets most of the interior full, the lip is certainly covered. He's not, obviously not too concerned about his paraduma water, which is now mixed in very significantly with mikvah water. So then, we leave it at that. Okay, so in a nutshell, we had a mix between dam of carbon with water. If it retained its color, it retains its status. Mixed in with other red materials like red wine or blood of a regular chulin animal, royan. Rather than allowing it to just be bottle, if it's 49% or less, we say no. We treat that other red material as though it's water and treat it accordingly and judge whether this amount of blood would still retain its color within that general mix, and it's not bottle. So we don't say bit of a in this case, as we just explained in the Gemara. Dam of a carbon doesn't just become bottle b'roiv, or whatever reason would be the basis for that halacha. Then we have Rabbi Yehuda, who says ein dam batal dam, in line with his Rabbi Ram Gamliel, who says in general min b'mini is not bottle at all. And certainly when it's a matter of two different types of items, and likewise when it's a matter of two different types of items with the same appearance, likewise. The bittul doesn't just happen if it's merely 49%. Rather, we view it as though it's a different color, and we have to we need enough to actually nullify the color of the dam to make it bottle. Now, Rabbi Yochanan in the Gemara tells us retention of color is only valid if the water is what's spilled into the blood. But if the blood slowly trickle into the water, then as it's running in its bottle, it becomes nidche from kedusha. But that doesn't really apply to kisi adam, which is a mitzvah-oriented issue. Rish Lakish tells us a chiddush. Two types of isurim chewed together. If they're of different flavor, then of course there's no bittul, because the tam of item A embedded in item B is still present, so there's no bittul. But if they're of the same type, two pieces of meat, then we say bittul. Inevitably, there's some bittul taking place, since there's no way to determine which one lost its kazai, so he's pater, completely pater. And this is in line with the shita that holds that when it's min b'min, it's always batal b'roiv. versus the opinion which holds that not so quick when it comes to Isurim, Tumah, and Karbanis. Specifically, we don't just say Bet HaBarayv, we say Rayin. You need more than just the fact that it's 49%. In a way, we apply a more strict formula. So, for instance, when it comes to the blood and water, or the wine and the mikveh water, even though they're of the same color, we don't just say Bet HaBarayv 49% Bet HaBarayv. We view it as though they're different colors, and if in fact it can retain, right, as though it's blood and water. If the blood would theoretically retain its color, that retained its status and can still be used for zrika of the carbon. All the best to you, and Atzlach.